All right, well, we're at our second stop for the day. Dr. Mohamed Mergoum is currently an associate professor and the hard red spring wheat breeder at NDSU. One of his major accomplishments includes the release of seven different spring wheat varieties. NDSU cultivars occupy about 60% of the spring wheat grown in North Dakota. The main goals of his program are to develop wheat varieties that meet the needs of the end user, generate valuable wheat germplasm for various research, and train future generations of breeders.
He said it all. Do you have any questions? I was going to talk about that stuff. It was depressing driving this morning from Jamestown to here. There is no more wheat. Corn, corn, corn. Well, it is depressing for me at least. Maybe you love corn. What is the future of wheat? You know that wheat is the last dinosaur where no private companies have been investing in this crop. And the good news now, more and more companies are coming back, investing in the breeding programs. As a matter of fact, all companies, big companies, are now opening breeding programs, either in spring wheat region as well as in winter wheat. That's good news because this will allow wheat somehow to catch up with other crops such as corn and soybean. And hopefully they can bring trade or technologies that we can use as a public breeding program to implement and release new products that will compete well with the corn and soybean and other crops. So you may heard that the only way to stay sustainable as a public breeding program is to have some kind of alliance with this private sector. Just in case if they come out with new technologies and we can access it. Otherwise we will become also history just like other public breeding for other crops. Or we become really very small program. So far, the wheat breeding program, the public wheat breeding program in general, they are still dominating the market. And it is true, as was mentioned, for North Dakota. More or less, average 60% of cultivar or area grown in North Dakota is still covered by varieties from NDSU and more from other programs such as Minnesota and South Dakota. Last year, we dropped it again to 5.5 million acre from more than 6 million. So wheat is decreasing in the state. This year we were expecting that a bump to go back. The statistics just out. Good news, we did not go down, but we went up. It's about 5.7, 5.8. Normally we were hoping to get back to 6 million, but there is a lot of wheat, as you know, it was not planted due to the condition of the spring. So we have now alliance with, we have one agreement with Monsanto. That's a big giant for GM trade. And we hope that we will access not only their trade, but we will access their technology in terms of using molecular markers as well as their high throughput technology for screening germplasm. So that's good news, and hopefully there are other alliances with other companies. We are talking to many companies, including some companies like Conagra, which they will be having a major role, particularly in the western part where they want to access white wheat. Having said that, I would like to talk a little bit about new varieties. Who is growing wheat anyway? Very few. Barlow is at the moment is #1 variety, and Barlow is released because it was adapted to this part of the state. You know very well the small town Barlow. We try to give names with some sense that where they are adapted. So Barlow initially released for this part of the state, and now is expanded to whole state. It is still expected to be #1 this year. It may even go up. Before that we had Glen, and before that we had Olsen. The new variety we released, I'm going to compare them to two checks. The check #1 is Glen, even though it's not #1 variety yet, but it is our check for quality. And we have Dr. Simsek here and the group from our quality lab, which they are the army behind us. They do all the quality tests for us. Glen is #1 still in terms of quality for us, and for also for the Wheat Quality Council, U.S. industry, as well as overseas export market. So we'll keep it until we find another new variety to replace it. So it has very high protein, a very high test weight, probably #1 in the whole variety grown out there. It has a very good disease package. Scab is probably one of the best variety for scab. And most importantly, it has very good bread making quality. So it's a variety which is basically balanced. It is not the top yielding. That's why Barlow took over Glen. Barlow, which we released after it, does well in terms of yield, maintaining good quality as well. So the other check, it's the opposite more or less of Glen, is Fowler. Fowler is almost #1 in the eastern part of the state, definitely #1 in Minnesota. In the last 4 years, it occupied almost 30%. So it's a variety for high input environment. If you have good environment, good input, Fowler will give you very high yield. Relatively to Glen, it's not as high protein as Glen, which is normal. When you produce 10, 20, 30 bushel more than Glen, obviously the protein will be diluted then. But I always mention, interestingly, genetically, Fowler is still better than Glen in producing protein by acre. If you multiply yield by the percent of protein, Fowler is still genetically high perform. So these are the two checks. The variety I'm going to talk that we released in the last couple of years, I will compare them to these two varieties. We have Velva, which we released in 2000. Before that, we released Prosper. Now, if you like Fowler, then Prosper, it's your variety. It's a variety that is very, very close to Fowler, and it is a sister line even genetically. They came out from the same cross. The only difference is Prosper. It does yield better than Fowler in certain environment, not all environment. And also, if you take the average of protein of Prosper over many years and many locations, it does tend to have around 0.2, 0.3% protein than Fowler, which is very important because when, as I mentioned, when you deal with very high yielding levels, it's very difficult to increase substantially any other trait, in protein, for instance, or other quality trait. We expect that Prosper was grown on 2% last year, and most of it, 2% is not much, but if you multiply by 5.5 million, that's a large amount of seed. Most of this is not for milling or bacon or salmon. These are just seed. So expect Prosper to be on a large scale this year or next year. So that's Prosper. Then in 2012, we released Velva. Again, the name, you know very well, where Velva, close to Minot. This variety is more adapted to this center to west. It does perform very well in terms of yield. Quality overall, it's average, very close to Reader if you have grown Reader. But it does well in terms of if you grow it in this center of state, as I said, Minot into Williston region. So it is a variety that may not take a lot of acreage for many reasons. One of the reasons is become between Barlow and another variety which come in. I will talk later on, which that seems to be better fit than Velva. So the last one is Elgin. Actually, the name is Elgin ND, not Elgin, because the name Elgin was found to be given to another variety in the past, so we had to add North Dakota to Elgin name. So, and again, Elgin was a small town in the western part. We give it that name because Elgin was one of the few varieties that tend to be very close to Reader. As you know, Reader in the west is a variety that has dominated very much the western part, and even Montana. Some years it was #1 in Montana, and it's a very good variety for dry land. And Elgin, it does well there as well. However, Elgin, it is one of the varieties that has very large adaptation. It was released for the whole state. It has an excellent package in terms of disease as well as quality. Protein-wise, it's almost equal to Glen, which is a great achievement. And yield, better than, I think, except Prosper or Fora in the eastern part, Elgin will out-yield all other varieties, including Barlow. Very close to Barlow, 1 or 2 bushels advantage though. I think the most important of Elgin is the combination of high yield, better than Glen, but maintaining the quality, not 100% of Glen, but at least protein. Even bread making, low volume and other traits, they are close to Glen. So that's why I guess now we are thinking, and the Wheat Quality Council last meeting tried suggesting that Elgin will replace Glen in terms of quality check. So that speaks for Elgin, that it has good quality. It's very tough position, competitive to be a check for quality. So from partial, many years, we moved to Glen, and now maybe Elgin. So it's a good variety. We are glad to have combined all the trait there. And of course, there will be always something missing, otherwise I will not have a job, or Dr. Simsek will not have a job as well. Anyway, just a few words about new varieties that are released from other programs. You have Linkerd from Minnesota. Linkerd is one of the first varieties that Jim Anderson has released with good protein. Normally they focus on mellow type and yield. So it does combine both yield and good protein. Functionality in terms of quality, gluten and so on, it's average to good. So it seems like it may be a good variety, particularly to the eastern part of the state, definitely for Minnesota. You can see it's a very short and dwarf variety, and certainly will have a good future in the Red River Valley. South Dakota has released 2 varieties in the last year, Forefront and Advanced. Just by looking at them, you can see one is mostly for the western part, which is Forefront. It's taller, earlier, and better yielding in the western part than Advanced. Advanced is mostly for the Red River and the eastern part, if it is adapted to our state, but mostly in the eastern part of South Dakota. There are other varieties from private sector, and I will not step there because you never know how much, recently we used to have in the past lines before they released them. We have them in our uniform regional trial. So we have 2-3 year data before they release them, so we can tell you how they perform and so on. But with the new intellectual properties and so on, we cannot access them anymore unless we have some agreement with them. So we will grow them until they are released. So it takes a couple of years to generate data on that.